Lloyd is a fascinating character, debatably one of the most fascinating in all of Ninjago itself, maybe except for some of the other ninja. He has a lot of depth to him, especially in the emotional field. And that's good, that's fantastic, that's exactly what you want for the main characters of the show. And a lot of aspects of Lloyd is highlighted in a multitude of different analysis videos that you can see on YouTube. But one thing that I do find interesting that I don't think is truly covered enough is Lloyd's reflection of himself. Season 4 Part 1 has definitely entered that field in terms of exploring how he does feel, but I do think it does go much further than just simply that season itself. And when you do truly look back at all of the moments of Lloyd, especially within recent time, you realise that there is a pattern emerging. You realise that there is more to his character than I do think is initially realised. Some infamous lines from Lloyd that have been discussed in a very multitude of ways have definitely now come across in a different light if you do consider the possibility of Lloyd's own reflection. And that's going to be what we explore today. I'm going to show you some examples that we do see, and I do think we have got enough to establish one thing in particular, which is Lloyd has a very real possibility that he just quite simply doesn't like himself. Lloyd doesn't seem to like who he's become and what he has manifested within himself, and I do think that is fascinating. So let me not waste any more of your time and let me show you what I have found, because I believe there's a very real argument to suggest that Lloyd hates himself. Now, I realise that what I am saying here is coming across in a very harsh light. The term of hate, in my opinion, is extreme in terms of what it truly does implicate. Hate is a very difficult word to truly quantify, but I do think there is argument that Lloyd does have those tendencies, and I do think it began as a reflection as early as the beginning of the 11-minute era. In the Fire chapter, we had a very brief glimpse into how Lloyd does view himself in some capacity. In the mirror of which it shows the person their greatest fear, Lloyd comes across as Garmadon. Lloyd's greatest fear is becoming his father. Now the thing is that is obviously going to be based in some form of reality. Fear is ultimately caused by some sort of rationality. A rational fear does exist, but not really in the case of Lloyd. Lloyd has this really interesting tendency on manifesting his feelings based on what is around him, and if you look at how he views his father at that point in time, you realise that it does also show on himself, because that is what he believes, or that's what he fears he can become. Lloyd at this point doesn't really view Garmadon in any sort of positive light. He kind of just accepts Garmadon for what he is. He accepts that he is not the man that he once knew. He's not his father in any real sense. In one of their last interactions in the Oni trilogy, which is the last time we see them speak until this point in time, it is an aggressive conversation between the two. They're about to form the Tornado of Creation, and Garmadon is actually refusing, and Lloyd snaps at him, claiming that he's just as much of a part of history as the ninja are themselves. It is not a positive interaction by any account. Lloyd has anger towards his father. Lloyd has a lot of negative emotions towards him because he couldn't ultimately get through to him, and he didn't seem to care about any form of emotion that Lloyd wanted him to. So when you then take it in the context of Lloyd is afraid of becoming that individual, you realise that Lloyd believes that he could become an individual that is not capable of love or compassion or caring about the people around him. Lloyd very much believes that there is a possibility that it could be what he becomes. That is why he's afraid of it. So you realise immediately that Lloyd definitely doesn't seem to view himself in a good light. He seems to believe that there is darkness capable within himself, and that's not really a good way to look at yourself on an overall scale. The next indication that we have that there is more to Lloyd's feelings about himself is actually then from the Ice chapter. When Lloyd is travelling along the Nether Realm and he's actually communicating with Akita, who he doesn't realise at this point is a formling, he just talks blindly about his life, his experiences. He talks about Harumi and Garmadon, and he talks about the things that he faced over the course of the show. Once he then realises that he has spoken those things to someone else that is conscious conscious that is human by all accounts, he actually goes into a panic. He gets angry, he gets honestly kind of regretful of the things that he says. He panics thinking about the things that he has talked about, and he really is not happy in this moment. You realize that he was venting to Akita. He was saying things that he definitely wasn't happy with, and he now knows that someone else is aware of it, and he immediately resorts to anger. He immediately resorts to negative emotions. He's not happy that he finally got it out there to someone who could potentially understand. He realizes that whatever he has spoken is things that he didn't want to truly come out, which most likely implies that there are things that he's mentioning that are things that are definitely not the best reflection on himself either. Again, think about the fact he's discussing Garmadon, someone who he absolutely despises and he is afraid of becoming in one sense or another. So if he's truly in a negative feeling about himself, you realize that this is definitely another reflection on how he truly feels. But after that point, we don't really get much of an indication on Lloyd's psyche for a while, but we do then get to Crystallized, where there is a rather infamous line that I do think could be seen in a very different light when you do understand how Lloyd truly feels about himself. The line that people recite where Lloyd talks about the Oni, talking about how they don't feel, they don't have emotion, they don't care about anything. He talks in a very negative sense about the Oni. A lot of people attribute this to character assassination. And honestly, to an extent, I do agree, because what he says is inherently false, and he does know that for a fact. But the thing is that he himself admits after the fact that he said it in a bout of aggression. He said it towards Garmadon, and he said it basically just to vent because he didn't know what to do with his own emotions. But again, there's a more interesting context to this moment. Yes, on the surface, it's just him lashing out at his father. It's him lashing out about the situation that he is in and how he just doesn't care for how Garmadon has become, no matter how much Garmadon tries. But you realize in this moment that Lloyd is also discussing himself. Not just the fact that, again, he's talking to the very person that he's afraid of becoming, but you realize that he's talking about how the Oni don't care in these beings of hatefulness. He knows he himself is part Oni. He knows that Oni is within him. He is very much familiar with that concept, yet he still believes that they are beings that are nothing more than hatred. This is a reflection of himself. He's talking about himself in a way. He's talking about a part of him that cannot be taken out. He truly is not just on about Garmadon or Mustake or any other of the Oni for that matter. He is genuinely talking about himself. It is a moment of true hatred for his own person. All of this just shows one interesting and consistent pattern. Lloyd, in instances of very high emotion and very high anger, particularly towards his father, just lashes out about Oni. He lashes out about how they're unfeeling, lashes out about how they're beings that are nothing more than just bad. And again, like I said, it is a reflection on himself. He is talking about himself in a lot of ways here, showing that Lloyd truly isn't happy. And you would think that maybe this would end at some point in time, like when he has a very brief reunite with his father at the end of Crystallized. But no, it just doesn't seem to actually happen. Because that then brings us on to Season 4 Part 1 of Dragon's Rising, a season where we truly do delve into the mind of Lloyd. We see Lloyd go into the trial of the Green Ninja, and we see how his mind manifests parts of him, different aspects of him, different versions of him across his own timeline, and also alternate versions of him as well. He encounters 3 versions of himself, a young version, a teenage version, and also an evil version. All of them having the qualities of Lloyd and having the understanding of Lloyd as well. All of them representing Lloyd in their own way. And all of them have aspects that Lloyd truly cannot comprehend, or more specifically, angles of him that he truly does not like. This in particular does apply to enemy Lloyd. This version of him is a version that acknowledges all of his errors, all of his faults, all of the things that he does do wrong, all of the things that Lloyd will not speak out loud to himself, but he is now finally hearing. Talking about how he's failed the ninja, how he's failed Wu, how he's failed the lands in of themselves. And Lloyd does deny it, but we all can see that there is denial. Enemy Lloyd acknowledges this as himself, and it's the reason why he ultimately wins the fight between each other, because the things that evil Lloyd is saying to Lloyd are things that Lloyd does truly believe about himself. They are all aspects of his own mind that is demonstrating a very different look, a look that hates all of the things that he is truly doing. Teen and young Lloyd also do have this to an extent, but in a much more passive degree, to the point where Lloyd in of himself actually asks the younger version of Lloyd if he is even happy. This young version is a version of him that truly doesn't really know. He is a version of Lloyd that seems to be happy on the outside, but is just doing exactly what Lloyd is used to. Lloyd asking the question of are we truly happy is a reflection on his own belief. Seeing a version of him in front of him that is hiding the emotions that he himself is hiding really does call into question whether or not Lloyd is happy. He starts to doubt it even himself, so he looks for an outside perspective but ultimately does not get it, because he doesn't have the answer, or more specifically might not be facing up to it. Teen Lloyd just antagonizes him. He just doesn't really seem to give any sort of direct answer, which is fitting for the age range, but it does still show a different reflection. Antagonistic, just being annoying, being aspects of Lloyd that he definitely does not care for. Again, we do get to see at least some sort of identity crisis here, but again, it just doesn't go all that far. But it does just show, regardless, that Lloyd truly doesn't know these answers and is trying to find them, but again can't. So again, just showing this interesting pattern of a character who just doesn't seem to like himself, and it's sad. If anything, it's a sad thing to truly see. The main character really having to face up to the fact that he just doesn't seem to like what he does really is just quite depressing. But luckily there does seem to be a positive thing at the end of this road. Because through this cycle of hate and dislike and just not really feeling good about himself, I do think towards the end of Season 4 Part 1, where he passes the trial, he unites the ninja and connects with everything around him, I think he does actually stop to hate himself. I think that there is a very different feeling about Lloyd once he does actually accomplish what the Green Ninja is capable of. When he's connected to everyone around him, there is a very noticeable demeanor change. Of course, Lloyd is still capable of anger, he's still capable of negative emotion, but he feels more sure of himself. A scene that I commonly think about is the very last scene of Part 1, where he's looking around the monastery and seeing all of the ninja together and happy with their loved ones around them. Lloyd is happy. He's content. He has this moment where he just smiles, and I think that is a true reflection. I think past all of these moments of hate and doubt and anger and sadness, I think he finally did become happy in that moment. Who knows where that goes, and who knows what effect I'll have on him, but I do think it's the first official change up in how Lloyd is. It's noticeable when you truly do realize what is there. So to round it all off, does Lloyd hate himself? Yes, I think he used to. I think Lloyd truly did despise the person he was at one point in time. Not intentionally, but I think just as a byproduct of all of the things that were around him. All of the things with his father. All of the things that he believes he's failed at. I didn't even mention it all. He blames himself for when Nia merged with the sea. He believes that all of these burdens are on him, and he doesn't like himself because he doesn't have the answer every single time. But now we're facing a new version of him. A version of him that does seem happy. A version that does seem better. A version that seems sure of himself. A version that has matured through the recognition of what his power truly does mean. I think Lloyd is on a very different table now. I think Lloyd has turned a leaf that I do think can be seen, and hopefully we will see for the future to come. But who knows, I may be wrong, but as it stands, I think Lloyd has definitely changed his perspective, and I love to see it. But I would love to know what you think about this. I would love to know if you agree with me on this idea that Lloyd may truly not be happy with himself, at least during the phase of the 11-minute era and a lot of Dragon's Rising. Did you pick up on the same context clues that I did, or do you think I'm wrong? I would love to know what you think, because I do think it's an interesting topic and I would love your input on it. But as it stands, I really do have a new appreciation for Lloyd. I don't like the fact that he doesn't seem to like himself during a vast majority of the show, but it's nice to see that he's become content. I don't know, I think these powers were a good thing, but who knows what's gonna lie in there for the future. But yeah, I'd like to know what you think. But thank you very much for watching the video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always become a channel member and join the legends that you see on screen. Each of your support means the absolute world to me, and I truly cannot thank you enough. But like I said, that's about it for today, and take care. Okay, bye!